So you can see initially, like up to almost 10 days, there is a peaking of viremia, and that gradually by about 10th day, the viremia settles down. It will again, by 10th day, the patient won't be viremic, patient won't be able to transmit the disease, and that viremia will settle down. And even if you do a PCR at this point of time, PCR may show positivity. That means that is only the some fragmented the viral particles. The patient will not be infecting. Regarding the oxygen saturation, the patient will be a normal oxygen saturation up to about even 10 days. Later on, the patient can develop inflammation, which is called as an early pulmonary phase, and can develop hypoxemia. So this is also very, very important, especially the patients with comorbidities and patients with high CRP, D-dimer values, etc. These patients, even though their oxygen saturation remains same up to 7-8 days, they can further deteriorate afterwards. So a patient remaining remaining in normal oxygenation does not mean that that patient will be in the stable stage. They can go into early pulmonary phase and develop complication. That is why you have to watch such patients for at least 14 days. Then coming to the inflammatory response. Initial 5 to 7 days, you won't get an inflammatory response. But later on, after the end of 1 week, the patient will develop inflammatory response by the time the viremia will settle down. So here, at this point, you have to start the inflammatory therapy. Now coming to the treatment part. So in the viremic phase, when the viral load is high, so this is the phase where you will have to start antivirals. And with the available evidences, the remdesivir is the antiviral drug with a reasonably good evidence. So if the patient is having a persistent fever or likely to deteriorate because of these symptoms, etc., you start the patient on remdesivir at this point. Suppose your patient is becoming hypoxemic by about 10th day. Okay, the patient is desaturating. See, by this time, your viremia has completely cleared. You have already closed after 10 days. So there is no point in giving an antiviral drug after 10 days. This concept should be very, very clear. I've seen many clinicians doing the mistake starting an antiviral drug after 10 days. So that is because that clinician is not having the basic concept of the disease. Now coming to the inflammatory phase. So there is an early inflammatory phase where the patient will be having a dip in saturation, and the mild oxygen requirement will go into a high oxygen requirement. Patient will become tachypnic, and you will have to start the patient either on high flow nasal cannula or NIV. So those are the group of patients who are going to benefit with dexamethasone based on the recovery trial. So even if the patient is having a mild hypoxemia requiring oxygen, you don't require a dexamethasone for that patient. We don't have enough evidence for such group. A patient who is requiring NIV, HFNC or high flow oxygen, definitely you have to start the patient on steroid. The same way those patients who are ventilated also, they will benefit from steroid. If this patient is again going for the severe inflammatory response where your ferritin values are going high, LDH is going high, patient is having persistent temperature, interleukin levels are high, you do something like an H score and see the H score is more than 150 or 169. So these are the group of patients where you will have to start the other like immunomodulatory drugs like tocilizumab. So I think now this concept is very, very clear. Okay. So this is how we treat the patient with COVID-19. Now coming to the oxygenation part. So if the patient is having a PF ratio of less than 150 and hypoxemic, there is no doubt you have to mechanically ventilate the patient and go with the lung protective strategies. If that oxygenation is mildly, in the PF ratio more than 150, you start the patient on NIV or an HFNC. Then you can monitor these persons and see whether these persons are deteriorating. And if showing that, if they are showing a deteriorating trend, immediately you have to intubate the patient. So here, how will we optimize the patient on NIV? So NIV, as you know, we have an IPAP and an EPAP. So here in this patient, you can see a huge tidal volume. So there will be an overstretching of lungs because of this like a significant respiratory effort. So this patient, if you connect into the into the NIV, you can see they'll be generating huge tidal volume, more than 700 or 800. So this will cause an overstretching of lung fields, and that will produce something called a PCLI, or a patient-induced self-inflicted lung injury. Okay, so you have to prevent that overstretching. What we can do, you increase the EPAP. So once you increase the EPAP, your tidal volume will reduce, and again the IPAP you have to keep it in the minimum level. You don't have to give more IPAP when the patient is having a significant respiratory drive. This is how you start a patient on a NIV. Now, suppose if the patient is requiring a high oxygen requirement, not comfortable with normal oxygen, then you can start. Other option is high flow nasal cannula, where you can give a high FiO2 up to 100% of humidified oxygen. Here you will be setting the temperature, the FiO2 you can set by adjusting the flow of oxygen, and again the flow in the machine. So the flow in the machine, especially when you need a PEEP effect, you have to keep somewhere more than 40. So 40 to 60 liters flow you have to keep. FiO2 you titrate based on the respiratory, the oxygenation requirement. So now you started patient either on HFNO or NIV. So now you should understand whether these patients are responding to NIV or HFNC. From this point onwards, you should be very, very clear. And I think this is the area where majority of us are doing mistake. So what we will do, we will keep the patient on NIV or HFNC. We will gradually increase the FiO2 to 80, 90, 100, etc. Or like in NIV, we keep the oxygen the maximum flow possible. The patient may be breathing at 30, 35, 40 respiratory rate. The saturation will be 90, 91. You are happy because the patient saturation is 90, but you are not looking at how much oxygen you are giving. And once you keep this patient on such a fluctuating tidal volume and high respiratory rate, they are going to develop severe self-inflicted lung injury. And once that damage has occurred, definitely you won't be able to rescue that patient. So, dear friends, please understand that the patient on NIV or HFNC, you should understand at what point you have to stop these and you have to ventilate that patient. If you are delaying ventilation in that group of patients, you may not be able to rescue those patients. Even the patients who are dying in my unit, like those who are referred from outside, majority of the time this is the issue. When we get a phone call, they say that the patient is stable on NIV, saturating at 92%. Yesterday also I had a phone call. So I told I want to know the details. So those people don't even know how much FiO2 they are keeping. So when I asked, the FiO2 was almost 90%. He is saturating at 92. Then I asked for an ABG. ABG was showing his CO2 values of 18 and the pH of 7.6. What does it mean? The patient has already gone for an alkalosis, respiratory alkalosis. Why? He is severely tachypneic. You can see from that ABG itself. So such group of patients, then I asked, so they told like 5 days like he's like that. Then when we shift that patient, we can see extensive lung damage. Whatever treatment you give to such patients, it is very, very difficult to rescue those patients. So please don't unnecessarily prolong intubation and keep your patients on NIV. So now coming to the NIV tolerability, how will you see? The patients on NIV, HFNC or high oxygen, how to assess that patient? So this is based on this ROCA's paper. We call it as a ROCA index. So the ROCA index is, ROX index of SpO2, you divided by the FiO2 to the respiratory rate. So if it is less than 5, that means the patient is deteriorating. You have to assess this index every 2 hourly and see whether this patient is tolerating or not. If ROX index is more than 5, you can comfortably keep this patient on NIV or HFNC or oxygen. If it is ROX index is less than 5, immediately you have to think about ventilating such patients. Now, I've already told this patient, I put on HFNC. Now the patient is on FiO2 of 50. SpO2 is 94%. Respiratory rate is 20. So how will you calculate ROX index? So ROX index is SpO2 divided by FiO2. So 94 divided by 50 FiO2 means 0.5 divided by respiratory rate 20. So 9.4. So now the ROX index is 9.4. And you see subsequently what is the ROX index. So if the ROX index is slightly going up, that means the patient is improving. The same patient, I can see another patient I'm putting on nasal oxygen. The patient is on 3 liters per minute of, sorry, this is minute. So patient is on 3 liters per minute of oxygen. So how will I calculate the FiO2? FiO2 will be 21 plus 3 into 4, because every 1 liter you have to add 4% from the baseline room air FiO2 of 21. So for 3 liters, 3 into 4. So total will be 33%. Patient is saturating at 94. The respiratory rate is now 30. So now you have to see what is the SpO2, 94 divided by 0.33, and again divided by the respiratory rate 30. So it is ROX index is 9.5. You see these both patients are equally sick now. The patient on 3 liters per minute, but his respiratory rate is very high and his saturation is low. So that is why his ROX index is 9.5. This patient on FiO2 50 is also maintaining a ROX index of 9.4. So the severity wise, both are almost equal. Okay. Now another method of the like assessing the tolerability of HFNC and NIV is looking at work of breathing index. Here you can see respiratory rate by counting. You can see less than 21, 21 to 25 to 26 to 33, and more than 34. If there is a nasal flaring during inspiration, as is shown in this picture, it is given 1 point. If the neck muscles, sternocleidomastoids, are in use during inspiration by palpation, you can give 1 point. The abdominal muscles are in use during expiration, you can see by palpation, it can be given 1 point. So if this work of breathing index is more than 4, that also indicates that the patient is not tolerating your therapy. Or in simple words, if the patient is extremely tachypneic on oxygen or NIV or HFNC, either you have to modify the settings of these devices. If on an HFNC, you will have to increase the flow from 40 to 60. If it is on an NIV, you have to try increasing the EPAP and see whether the patient is tolerating. Here at least 2 hours you have to wait and see whether what is the difference. Like 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, like that, you have to see the ROX index or work of breathing index. Okay. If it is tolerating, you can continue. Otherwise, you will have to think about intubating the patient. So now see this diagram. This is the basically you can see the first diagram is with the spontaneous breathing, the lung expansion, and this is with the controlled breathing. Different phases of respiration. You see with the spontaneous breathing how much overstretching is happening to the lungs. So once this overstretching and cilia has damaged the lung parenchyma, it will be very, very difficult to rescue such patients. So even when you control ventilate, you can see this is a patient with mechanical ventilation and spontaneous ventilation. See, these red areas are indicating the volumetric strain. So on spontaneous breathing patients, you can see how much strain it is happening, but in controlled ventilation, the strain will be less. So you need timely intubation. So that is the first concept. You should be very, very clear as far as the COVID ventilation is concerned. COVID ventilation is concerned. Don't think that if you delay the intubation, the patient is going to survive. No, patient will not survive. That point should be clear. And there are many data also, like the relative risk of death in the hospital increases as you are delaying the intubation in a nasal high flow nasal cannula. The high flow nasal cannula failed. You can see the time as you increase, the risk of hospital death is also more. Now you have decided your ROX index is down. Your patient is in an isolation room, if possible in a negative pressure room. You have decided to ventilate this patient. So how you are going to ventilate? You put the patient in a negative pressure isolation room if possible. Keep the ventilator, monitor on one side. Your airway equipment, like your tubes, the bougie, all things you keep in the other side. The person who is going to intubate should be here. You can keep the ventilator also here. Then the drugs monitor, etc. Other monitors you keep it here. And the person, this is the person who is going to monitor the ventilator and the monitor, and he is the person who is going to give you the drug. And this is the person who is going to give you the equipments, airway equipments and required pressure if required. So in an intubating room, you need only 3 persons and everything should be ready. And if the patient is like you can either put the patient initially on NIV or ventilator itself. and pre-oxygenate with the ventilator, or if the patient is on a high flow nasal cannula, you can use that itself. And then without pre-oxygenation, you can go for a intubation. The skilled intubator or experienced intubator should always do that. If possible, do a video laryngoscope. And again, if that the you can, if the intubating the hood, if you want, you can use that also. Outside the room, you need a runner. This is the person who is going to get you the equipments or like any drugs if it is required. So this is how you have to place the patient. You have to place the 3 persons inside, how to assist that. Now see how you are going to modify your ambu bag. So I have already told like you have to do the modification in NIV circuit, HFNC, and in ventilators and ambu bag to reduce the aerosol generation. Here, what you have to can understand is you are when you are ventilating the patient, there is an expiratory part here where you are keeping a PEEP valve also. So before this expiratory part or between the patient and the expiratory part, you have to keep a viral filter. So whatever the expiratory air is coming, that will be coming after filtering into the viral filter. This is how you have to keep an ambu bag. Now, one more thing you should be very, very clear before going into the COVID ventilation. What is compliance? A patient with a high compliance means this is a very thin, a flyable lung which is easily distensible. Okay, very easy to distend. So this group of patients with high compliance will be having a low elastic recoil, or this is called as a low elastance group. Okay, high compliance will be having a low elastance, or the compliance and elastance are inversely proportional. So this is a stiff lung where the patient will be having a low compliance but high elastic recoil. So this group will be having a high elastance. Okay, so this is a patient with a normal compliance and a reduced compliance. And the compliance is basically a distensible lung will be very compliant and a stiff lung will be less compliant. Okay, I think that concept about ARDS is very clear. Now we will move on to the COVID ARDS. So we have two variants described by Gattinoni. One is called the type 1 variant, otherwise it is called an L type, and a type 2 variant, otherwise called as an H variant. Here you can see the lung fields will be almost normal. There will be slightly patchy consolidations. Here at this point, you can see there is like a significant consolidation looking like our normal ARDS. One more point I wanted to add at this point. So this week I got at least 6 references, like young patients who are completely normal. The clinician wanted to assess his lungs and they are taking a CT for that lung. And asymptomatic patients and CT. So majority of the COVID patients, even if they are completely normal, if you do a CT, you can see some of these peripheral shadows. That doesn't mean that the patient is sick or the patient is going to develop a severe lung changes and you have to bombard him with all antiviral steroids, everything. I've already told the steroid evidence is for a significant hypoxemic patients on mechanical ventilation, NIV or HFNC, not for non-hypoxemic patients. And hypoxia means your saturation should be less than 94% at least, or 92%. Okay, if the saturation is somewhere around 95, 96, don't assume it is low and start steroid. Please don't do that. Steroids are having so many other issues also. So don't think that all COVID patients should receive steroid. So this is the type 1 lung. So here, what is the difference? These patients with a normal lung fields will be having a high compliance, but as we have told, they will be having a low elastance. So this low elastance, this is called as L group. So they also will require, they also will be having low ventilation perfusion ratio, low lung weight and low recruitability. These group of patients are not recruitable. Now we have other group of patients. These are just like any other ARDS. They will be having a low compliance but high elastance, high left to right shunt, again high right to left shunt, and again high lung weight and high recruitability. So this group of patients will require high PEEP, and this group of patients will not require high PEEP, and you can manage the hypoxemia with high FiO2. How we are going to do that? I've already told. This is the one patient we have. Basically, this is a normal patient developing like a ARDS. So usually there can be hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction. That will not happen, and there will be microthrombate to the vasculature, and there can be high shunt, and they will be developing hypoxemia. Okay, so these are the patients who are not responding to P for recruitment with normal compliance. So their alveoli is absolutely normal, as you can see. The problem is with their vasculature. But there are other group of patients where they are having the flooding of their alveoli like any other ARDS. So they are the group with low compliance, high elastance, so-called H group, who are going to respond to high PEEP, prone position, etc. Okay, and a high respiratory rate can be because of hypoxemia, an increased metabolic demand and cytokine storm, and neurotropism. Why that is important? Whenever you are assessing ROX index also, you see whether the respiratory rate is more because of like a fever or a cytokine storm or a secondary infection, etc. Those parameters you can definitely control, and you can give some more time for those patients for initiating intubation. So now the evolution of the disease. I've already told we will be having a type L patient with a high compliance. So they may sometimes remain unchanged for a period. Then they can gradually improve, or sometimes they can go worsen also. This L group of patients can develop multiple lung shadows and can deteriorate. This is basically because of patient self-inflicted lung injury. So this L group of patients also, when you are ventilating, you should try to avoid this patient self-inflicted lung injury. So that can again produce lung edema, dependent atelectasis, the increasing lung weight, injury attributable to high stress ventilation, more evolution of COVID-19 pneumonia and NH pneumonia. Okay, so the change from L to H is possible. The severity can change. Now, this is a very, very important slide. So people are getting confused between H and L type and how to keep an FiO2 and PEEP. Which group you have to give more PEEP, and which group you have to keep in a normal PEEP. Suppose you forget about CT finding everything. I have an ARDS patient. I've started on, I have a COVID patient developing hypoxemia. I started the patient on HFNC, put on optimal settings. Now the ROX values are coming down to almost 4 or 4.5, less than 5. I've even tried NIV, keeping high EPAP, all optimal settings. Still, the ROX values are less than 5. I've decided to intubate the patient. I've intubated the patient. I put the patient on volume control mode. I put the patient on 100% FiO2. Tidal volume, I kept it 400, PEEP at 7. So what I have to do next? I have to see what is the driving pressure and what is the compliance. I have put the patient on inspiratory hold. So my plateau pressures are high. Now the compliance is very low and the driving pressure is high. Okay, look at here. The driving pressure is high, the compliance is low, the plateau pressure is very high for a normal tidal volume. So what does it mean? So this is a patient who is going to respond for a incremental PEEP, because here the driving pressure is high, the compliance is low. So this is a recruitable lung. So you forget about HL, everything. So only thing, if the plateau pressures are high, you have to look for the compliance, and if the compliance is low, you have to titrate the PEEP. And this is the so-called, which group of patient it will be? Low compliance means it is high elastance. So this is a H group. Okay. So forget about H group, all those things. So here you have to definitely increase the PEEP. Now coming to I've kept other settings at I ratio 1:2, respiratory rate 18, etc. Okay. So this is now almost the patient will be having a severe ARDS like picture, your low compliance or high elastance H group. Now this is a type H with low compliance. Now I have another patient, the same, not tolerating HFNC and NIV. I ventilated, same settings. I put at FiO2 100, tidal volume 14, and PEEP at 7. So here I am doing an inspiratory hold. I'm seeing a very low plateau pressure, 24. Driving pressure is extremely low and the compliance is very good. So this is a very good compliant lung with a very low driving pressure. So this group of patients are not going to improve with a higher PEEP. So here, this group of patients, when you are ventilating, you can accept them like a reasonably good tidal volume. And again, you can accept high FiO2 levels. Don't try to like target a FiO2 of 60 in this patient. You can keep titrating an FiO2 for a saturation of somewhere around 90, 92, but not more than 92. So try to keep it a minimum FiO2, but don't try to recruit this patient. So this patient, what will I do? Like this is the patient with type L and high compliance. Okay, so here there is no role for increasing PEEP. You keep it at whatever PEEP, 5 to 7, like a 6 to 7 ml tidal volume. Here again you have to see whether the patient is not hyperventilating. If the patient is having hyperventilation and high tidal volume, obviously you have to keep more PEEP, as I've already shown in non-invasive, NIV diagram. Other option everybody is thinking, like if you want to reduce the respiratory drive and to control ventilate, you have to always paralyze and ventilate. Not true always. You don't have to paralyze always. Instead, you can use high dose of opioid and benzodiazepine in such group of patients. Suppose this group, this patient, what I am going to do. So here, as I want to do, I've already told, I can keep the patient at PEEP 7. I can look at FiO2. If 90 is required, I keep at FiO2 of 19. I may not require this much high respiratory rate. I can still reduce the respiratory rate. But this group of patients, what I will do, from 7, I try to increase the PEEP to 10. I reduce the tidal volume to 350 to reduce the plateau pressure. Here now you can see the plateau pressure is reducing, but driving pressure is still high. The compliance is not changing. So I have again increased the PEEP to 12. Now the plateau pressure is less than 27. Driving pressure is almost reaching 15. And I'm keeping an I ratio of 1:1 to improve the oxygenation. I'm increasing the respiratory rate also. So this is a group of patients who you have to manage like any other ARDS patient. But when the plateau pressures and the driving pressures are low, this is the group of patients who is having issues with the perfusion. Their lung parenchyma and compliance is almost normal. You should not use very high PEEP in this patient. That will damage their lung again. Okay, so these are the basic concept of COVID ventilation. You forget about HL and all, just ventilate normally, see what is the driving pressure, plateau pressure. If the plateau pressure are high, obviously they will be PEEP responders. You have to use PEEP. If your plateau pressures are normal with a normal driving pressure, you cannot recruit those patients. Don't go for a high PEEP, use a 5 to 7 PEEP, and high FiO2 is acceptable in this group of patients. But again, even if you start with this group of patients, gradually they can also worsen into like a low compliant. Here, like when you are optimizing, which we have already discussed, how to optimize the PEEP, how to optimize I ratio, everything we have discussed, you go with that. Okay, just like in normal ARDS. Here again, don't think about ventilator-induced lung injury, other stress factors and respiratory rate. Look at pH and decide respiratory rate. Forget about PCO2. You can accept high PCO2 values. Now, this is again another excellent review in the current of period critical care. So, this is like they were looking at spontaneous effort at lower PEEP and higher PEEP. Here you can see the pleural pressure swing is -20 at a lesser PEEP, but with a higher PEEP, that pleural swing can be reduced, so the inflammation also will be less. So when you are weaning and when you see that the pleural pressure swing or the tidal volume variation is too high, you can put that patients on higher PEEP and you can reduce this fluctuation. Same is applicable in NIV also. You can use the patient on high EPAP. Okay, so the PEEP can also reduce spontaneous effort and can reduce self-inflicted lung injury. You don't have to paralyze your patient always. What are the other changes you are going to make in a ventilator? Like heated humidifier, try to avoid that. Even if you are using a heated humidifier, like you have to use a heated circuit with the heated wires in the circuit. Other than that, the normal humidifiers should not be used. you have to always use a closed suction, otherwise the chances of aerosol generation will be high. You should never use a nebulization in a COVID patient or a COVID suspected patient. Nowadays in our ICU, we stop nebulization for all patients because as you know, even after a PCR is negative, at any time they can become positive or you may be missing one case. So you have to always use a MDI adapter, and using an MDI adapter, you can use these meter dose inhalers instead of nebulization. And the spacers we cannot use with the ventilator circuit, but there are different devices. This is called as other devices which can be connected to the ventilator circuit, MDI adapters. Different types of MDI adapters are there. So you start using an MDI adapter to your ventilatory circuit, and you have to always place a viral filter also. All you will place a viral filter. One thing at the at the Y port you can keep a viral filter, and again at the expiratory port also. So 2 viral filters should be placed for all patients, or an HME filter is also good enough at patient end, and one at expiratory port. Okay, so no closed suction, sorry, no open suction, no normal humidifiers, no nebulizers for COVID patients.